Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Nye County. This evening, I have my first guest is going to be Albert Bass, and we're going to be talking about several things during this session. But I do want to let you know that I want you to stay with us throughout the entire show because we have an expert on Tai Chi. We have a person talking about sharing grief and grief share. And then we're going to be talking lastly about what you've heard so much about, and that's moving the county seat from Tonopah to Pahrump. So those are things we're going to be talking about. But my first guest is Albert Bass. Welcome, Albert.
Great. Thank you,
We're
Tom.
glad to have you with us.
Appreciate it.
And there is so much that we want to talk about when we talk about local bus transportation in the town of Pahrump. First of all, we have to ask several questions of why we need this. And I know you're going to be answering all those questions. So let me go ahead and turn it over to you. Why do we need local bus transportation in the town of Pahrump?
Well, the Transportation Committee has been working on this for about 13 years in the community to provide a sustainable transportation system. Some of the systems that have been started in the past were more route services between Pahrump and Las Vegas, some Pahrump to Tonopah, but to have an internal system focused on the community of Pahrump to provide transportation to all of the community, and then in the future to expand that into our outlying areas and our other communities outside and for the rest of the county. But there's been multiple studies done over the years, and really in about the last 10 years, there's been 5 studies done on public transportation, the need, and the use within the community. And all of those studies show that we have a need for public transportation, that it would be utilized. And actually, we're also getting a current study being done by the CTAA, which is the Community Transportation Association of America. They're working on a needs assessment at this time to show what our current needs are and how applicable they are to our community's needs and services with a local bus system. One of the other things that it provides in a community is, we have the senior services that run their bus system. We have the DAV. We have programs that we have the RSVP transportation program. They cater to
why can't people use those?
If you qualify for those services, you can use them. So, you have to be a senior of a certain age, or maybe you have to be disabled, or you have to be a veteran, or you have to qualify under the RSVP criteria.
Okay.
So that does not leave you, that's not open to the whole community. That's geared towards those specific genres of people and servicing just those areas. Now fortunately, we have a public transportation system now with the taxi service. And they've been here almost 2 years now, and that's been great. And so we want to be able to supplement that with a system and a bus service that can help our whole community as well.
Can you talk at all about the, you mentioned the RSVP, the senior van and the DAV van. Let's go with the DAV van first. If a veteran wants to go, say, to Walmart, can they use the DAV van to do that?
Well, there's criteria that they have to meet. And they have to meet the criteria within the DAV to receive transportation services. And it's almost all for medical purposes. And what they do outside of that, I don't know, because I haven't seen that very much. So
there's nothing outside of that.
Yeah.
I can answer that question.
Good, because I haven't seen it. If there is, I haven't seen it.
No,
and it's for
medical.
Right, specifically for medical reasons. And and there's criteria you have to meet. So, and they do help satisfy, the need for the veterans in those areas. And, there's times when their vehicles are down and they need a backup vehicle.
Okay.
And that happens with all of our systems that we do have in town. If they have a vehicle that goes down, do they have a backup vehicle? Well, if we have buses in place and we have 2 just sitting within our cycle of 4 buses, one of those could be utilized for that program to help fulfill that need for a few days.
So when you talk about the fact that, say, the DAV van is only for veterans, the senior van is for seniors, and that's age 65 and above, what group of people might not fit in this area?
Well, the majority of our community is still under those, don't meet that criteria. We do have a lot of veterans receiving services. We have a lot of seniors that can utilize that. I personally know seniors that don't utilize the senior bus, that utilize other forms of transportation by trying to use their family, their friends, their neighbors. A public system would help fill that void and fill that need for them. One of the biggest things for me is, it's great that a bus system services the community as a whole. And we can expand that into the rest of the county as time permits and over the next 2 to 5 year plan that we actually have in place. But for me, one of the most important things right now is the economic development side of having a public system in place. There's so much that goes with a mass transit system in any community and what it does for that community on the economic development side.
Okay.
And there's actually been studies done by the FTA, did a study over 14 years. They looked at 1,200 communities like ours across the United States. And what that study found was that there's an 11% difference in net earnings growth between counties with transit and counties without transit. And that's pretty big.
Okay.
And just on the dollar side of that, that's an economic impact to the county of about $1.1 million a year. So I look at those things and see what can it do. It's not just servicing the people in our community that need the service and that can take advantage of it, but it brings an economic impact to our community as well.
Can you list another group of people that may not be able to use some of the transportation that's already here that could use a local bus?
Oh, yeah. Again, a vast majority of the community. We have people, the low-income people, people looking for jobs. We hear things all the time, and that I get calls in my office for people that have lost their jobs because they couldn't find a ride to work. And if we just had a transportation system in place, I could have gotten to work.
That makes sense.
And that happens so many times. But aside from our seniors, our students, we can impact the student programs, our youth groups and youth programs. But these buses could also be utilized if we set it up properly for any of our community events. We just had an event last week with the medical program in Las Vegas. Well, we didn't have vehicles in place to provide a vast number of people that wanted to get to those free services, those free medical services. If we would have had these vehicles here at this time, we could have utilized those to transport people to that event to get free medical care.
Oh, that would have been perfect. What about the, I'll say, sight impaired people that we have in our community? Is that a large number or a small number?
We have quite a few people. There's a large group here in town that are sight and visually impaired.
Okay.
This would definitely benefit them. And one of the things, having some type of public transportation does, and I hear this from a lot of seniors, and I was in the home health care business for 8 years. A lot of seniors don't want to burden their families or their friends or their neighbors with their needs.
Okay.
They want to be independent. They want to feel self-sufficient. If they had a program to utilize, they could take that burden off of their family or off their friends or off of that neighbors and happen to constantly go to them to help them meet their transportation needs.
Okay. Now, let's go back to something because I know Commissioner Schenhoff has asked this question. How are you going to pay for this?
Right. Well, about 67% on a weighted average of this comes from NDOT and the 5311 funding from the NDOT program, the Nevada Department of Transportation. They provide transportation services and funding throughout the state for all transit, and especially this program is for rural transit. So that's a big part of it. We have many different grants that we could go after. There's veterans grants, there's senior services grants with the ADSD. There's other transportation grants available that are federal, on the federal side as well, through the FTA. And we're working with the CTAA right now, which is the Community Transportation Association of America, through a free grant that we were offered to help us set up those funding sources, because we know that the county cannot help support a program right now. They have other things they need to focus on. So we don't want to create another burden for the county general budget. We have other sources that we want to utilize. And the bottom line is this, and this is what I tell people all the time. If the time comes when it's time to turn key to initiate the program, which would be October, November of next year due to grant cycles, if we don't have the funding or the money in place to make it work, to be self-sustainable, we just don't start. No cost, nothing, there's no bad feelings. It didn't hurt the county in any way. They haven't put anything forward.
Okay.
We just don't start if we don't have what it takes to start.
Oh, I think that's perfect. Now, so many people say, you're talking about grants, so you're talking about tax money. So why do we want to accept tax money?
Well, we've already paid these taxes. These are taxes that are already being paid, they're already being collected, they're already being sourced to different programs.
Okay.
If we don't use them in this county, they're going to go to another county. So,
and we want them here.
Right, we would like to bring those here, especially if it's to
Yes.
help our community be sustainable and to grow, absolutely.
That makes sense. Okay. Now, I know we wanted, how about the cost of the buses? What's it going to cost us to get buses here?
Well, typically to get the 4 buses we would like to utilize for this program would be anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000.
Okay.
But fortunately, we were able to work with the Utah Transit Authority, and they have donated 4 very nice buses for us to be able to utilize for our program here.
They've donated buses to us?
Right.
So no charge for buses at all?
No, actually that's completely covered. The only cost to us is just driving the buses from Salt Lake City to here.
What would these buses look like?
Actually, I have a picture here.
Oh, great.
If we could show
Okay.
that. I don't know how well that will come about. This is a picture here. It's a paratransit bus. It can seat anywhere from 8 to 16 people. It could carry up to 4 or 6 wheelchair passengers, depending on how we want to configure it. And each of these buses we can configure a different way on the inside. And so it's a huge savings to us. We will have these buses here to be able to inspect and utilize within the next couple of months. And the other thing we can do, you know, this transportation program, the grants don't kick off really from NDOT until October of 2016.
Okay.
If we have these here, we can utilize them for other programs within the community. You know, the coalition could use them to transport youth for different events. The senior center, if we have events, could come through. We have a huge event coming up next year throughout the whole state that's going to be right here in Pahrump. They could be utilized for that to transport people around.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things these buses can do outside of just the normal transportation that they would be set up for.
And how about the routes? How do you, if somebody needs a bus, what would they do?
Well, what we've done, initially the MASS program, the full service program, is a 9,000-hour program. And that program has full demand response throughout the whole community and has a central deviated bus route that runs a figure 8 throughout the center of town, hitting all of the main areas of town. What we did to cut costs to get started, we developed a 7,000-hour program and then also a 5,000-hour program, which will be able to have us as a full demand response through the community. As we grow in time and as we get data to develop exactly what our needs are, we can then implement the fixed route programs. For Elko, for example, you know, for about 10 years, they've had a demand response system. Just a couple of months ago, they started a deviated fixed route program because they had the data to support where they needed it and where it would be the most beneficial.
Okay. I think this is fantastic, and it's something we desperately need in our community. And I'm going to encourage everybody to contact their commissioners and let them know this is something we'd like them to support 100%. We have so much support in our community. Now, I live in Commissioner Shinhofen's district, and I know he and I have talked about it. I've seen his reports on things, and we desperately need this bus transportation. And we want you to stay around for our next session because there's so much going on. So thank you.